Good morning. And I'm Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms. And this is Charter Moms Chats. And I come online at around 9 a.m. Central Time every weekday morning to try to share stories and thoughts and respond to your questions about what is it like doing kind of not really homeschooling, but kind of stay-at-home schooling. And today, this is our first ever guest on Charter Moms Chat. So hi, this is Cristina Noriega. So she is an SAISD parent who recently joined the SAISD Foundation. And she wanted to have a chance to directly support what teachers and students are doing. So that's her new role at the SAISD Foundation. And last week, if you were watching, there was an episode where I can't remember what the main topic of the episode was, but we had a really lively discussion in the comments about the digital divide, which is something I've talked about repeatedly, something that I really worry about, and Cristina cares a lot about. We were talking about it in the comments, and I said, this needs to be its own show. So here we are.
Inga, thank you, Inga. It's something I obsess about. It's something that keeps me up at night, and so I'm happy for this opportunity, and of course, always lovely to talk to you and all of your viewers.
I missed you. I miss because we used to see each other at the co-working space and just around town and like mom blog stuff or the museum or.
You don't see anybody anymore. I actually ran into a friend in real life just taking a walk, and it was so exciting. It's like we stay apart, but it's so exciting. It's just someone I recognized, you know.
Yeah. Well, good. Okay. Okay. This new like split screen thing is kind of freaking me out. I'm like, am I recording this? I think so. Okay.
I have this very strange black dot on my screen that I'm aware of, and I tried to take it off last week. This is a perfect example of trying to adapt to work from home and having a camera and getting everything correct. So I told my kids, please don't barge in. But if you hear kids, I mean, I don't think it'll be too shocking for anyone in your group. So they exist. They're in my home.
Yeah. Mine. They were doing some Google Classroom, and then this is usually when I go live is when they kind of have recess. They go play in the backyard. But yesterday it was kind of cold, so they came back inside. I was like, guys, I'm still on the video. But it was okay.
Don't you want this?
But they snuck in. They snuck back in pretty quietly. But it was kind of chilly yesterday. Yeah.
It's very cold. Surprisingly cold.
Yeah. Okay, so we planned ahead and had questions, right? Because there are things that about the digital divide that I really wanted to make sure we covered today. Okay, so I guess one thing is to realize that this is not something that just happened because of coronavirus and the pandemic, that this is something that's been true for a long time. So I guess, can you kind of give a definition of like, what is the digital divide in education?
You know, the digital divide is just the access to devices and connectivity. Sometimes it's actually in schools, but it's even more profound at home. And in SAISD, a huge percentage of our families before this happened were completely without home Wi-Fi. Yes, they had access, but that's because the parents often had a smartphone and could receive messages, but nothing that, you know, you can do Zoom calls on or real classwork or anything like that. But it's been something that we've known about for a really long time. And this COVID situation just sort of just exposed it in a way and put it in the spotlight in a way that we've been able to, I think, ignore it a little, because we're like, well, it's okay. They have internet at school, you know, they'll be okay, without realize, oh, wow, this is a big deal to not have it at home, to not be able to, especially in this day and age, you know, it's so that's what the digital divide is. And the COVID crisis just completely made it even more obvious, especially in urban high poverty areas and in rural areas. You're seeing this nationwide. SAISD is one example, but it's happening all over the country.
So it was already an issue where families who didn't have Wi-Fi or devices at home, the kids had trouble using the internet to do their homework. And so the schools had to make sure that they could either do the homework without access to the internet, or the district put Wi-Fi on the school buses, right? As a way so students could get access to Wi-Fi, at least on their ride home, right? Or, you know, then they would supply, there were already programs in place, supplying hotspots and devices that kids could take home, right? So those are things the district was already doing.
Yeah, but even a year ago, it was a year ago, last April, a little more, a year ago today, that uh, Leadership SAISD hosted a panel on this topic specifically. So this was the same thing we were talking about a year ago, and there were some students on the panel. Some were CAS Tech students, I think YWLA students. There was my daughter is a Twain student, and a couple others, and half of them didn't have home internet access like a year ago. And so one of them was like, well, I just go down the street to the library, but sometimes it's inconvenient. I mean, the kids were saying this is what they do. This is how they cope, and our society has said, oh, that's acceptable. But I think right now we're realizing it really is not acceptable. It's not. No. We want to really prioritize education and say that that's the great, equalizer. We have to make it as equal as we can because we can't control a lot. We can't control poverty, home circumstance. We can't control a lot, but we can definitely offer tools, more equitable tools, I think so.
Yeah, and the workarounds that they were using, like the library or Starbucks or parks, those are closed. They can't, right, because of coronavirus. So even like plan B, C, D, and E are also closed. So
yeah. I mean, there's still cases though where students are going and parking their cars, and they need to log on, or there's still places that do have, but that's not an ideal situation, and we definitely don't want to encourage people being out and about right now because that's just it's not I don't think it's a great. This is me speaking as a parent, and as someone following the what our statewide and local orders are, that we don't want to be saying, oh, you have to go to do your schoolwork, you have to go somewhere.
Right. So is SAISD deploying those school buses sometimes, but then that creates an issue because if too many people cluster around a school bus with Wi-Fi, then that's screening a gathering that violates
no, that's not happening right now. SAISD is doing a couple of things, which we're going to talk about, which is deploying hotspots to families in need. And over 3,500 have already been deployed. It's an imperfect process, and that the need keeps growing. Schools did their individual inventory to see who are the families that need internet, and making sure everyone has a device. But those numbers change. It's not like we have 4,000 and that's all we'll ever have, 4,000 households. That was the initial tally. But there were some measures that were taken before to get more high school students connected. So the need would have been way greater, but we were already partially there.
Right.
Now there's an accelerated thing. And there is also a partnership with VIA called VIA Cares that just launched, which also includes COSA and SAHA, and of course the foundation, where VIA vans are being deployed to some select communities with high density housing units, and that already started last week. So it's not the same as the school buses, but it is something that where they've used data to identify the extremely high needs areas. So that in combination with the hotspot device distribution, which is being funded by the community. We can talk about that in a bit, but that's kind of the way that they're tackling it right now.
Well, that's a really good strategy, because then if the buses have Wi-Fi, right, the VIA buses, and they're going to places where people are safely in their homes, right? So they're not asking people to leave their home. So then you get the best of both worlds, right? You're like adding you're creating the opportunity to use the internet, but allowing people to safely shelter in place. So that,
Exactly. Which is what we definitely, that's what we want to encourage, sheltering in place until, the mandate is lifted.
Right. Okay. So, well, let's move to the next point, which is, so like you've talked about, like distributing the hotspots and the, which was something already that SAISD was already doing, but then they did an inventory, to get more data about who needs hotspots. They continue to distribute hotspots. You said that like high schoolers had been kind of the focus in the past, but now they're trying to reach just as many students as they can. The VIA buses, but sort of like what else is underway, and how can the community help?
Well, I think a couple things. I listened in, and the reason I'm looking away is because I want to look at, I listened in last night. There was an SAISD school board meeting. Had one last week, and it basically is an update on how many students, what percentage have been reached since spring break, since we've stayed at home, and
Right.
even in the past week, overall, it went from 80% to 91% contacted, and it's really, really high. In high school, it's 96% contacted. Middle school, 96, academy, 89%, and elementary, 88%. So I think one of the things, they are moving the needle. They are really working aggressively with faith specialists, principals, counselors, teachers, and, each campus kind of has their own plan for how to reach their families, and they know who are the families that are going to be the hardest to reach. So they're really doubling down on that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that, yes, they've connected. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're engaging, logging in every day. That's almost like a separate issue, and we'll have data on that within a week and a half, I believe, and how well it's working, how to engage, how consistently, because, we know, as you're a mother with working from home, I'm working from home with children. It's hard to focus on helping, especially younger children, and also meeting your own demands. So to see, I'll give you a perfect example. My own daughter, who knows she has a 10:30 Zoom call, my second grader, she played hooky from it, and I didn't know. And I was like, Paloma, I'm sorry, you cannot do this. But I think that's just a very good example of, it's challenging to also be on top of your personal schedule and then on top of your children's. But so what we're doing, we have a Connect campaign through the SAISD Foundation. And that's the primary way we're funding hotspots, because one of the things, so the district purchased 30,000 additional devices right after spring break, and almost all of them have already been distributed.
Oh, wow.
It's been a very, very concentrated effort, and we give a lot of credit to Ken Thompson, who's the head of tech for SAISD, for having the foresight to pre-order and secure those, because I think other districts are like, oh, they were a little later and they're having trouble. They're stuck in warehouses, So that's been a really big win. So we've gotten the one-to-one technology for the most students. The overwhelming majority now have access. They've gotten a device if they didn't have one already. The hotspots as well. But
okay, or just let me clarify, the 30,000 devices, those are things like tablets, Chromebooks. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so each campus had their own individual distribution schedule. Some were distributed devices 2.5 weeks ago. Others were still distributing last week. And I think there's a few left to figure this week. But it's been, every campus manages their own distribution. And with the hotspots as well. And
the overall population of students in SAISD is around 50,000?
Yeah, it's a 48,500, give or take. Wow. Yeah. So,
so the number of devices is almost as large. I mean, it's like maybe 2/3 as large as the entire student population of the district, which is just to put that in scale.
Yes. And this was always SAISD's plan. They were about halfway there. It was a 3-year plan that got accelerated to 2 weeks. And they used bond money to purchase that. Now, bond money cannot fund hotspots. That's why we're doing, because that's a connectivity. That's a separate thing. That's not technology. Right. So that's why the SAISD Foundation is fundraising specifically for that cause. And we're about 1/3 of the way there. We had seed money from Google Fiber. We had also the San Antonio Area Foundation COVID Relief Fund. We have some larger corporate funders, HEB, that have donated to the campaign. But then we also have well over 100, I think it's like 150 individual donors, parents like you, that have said, especially if you have a child and you see their face when they see their teacher and how engaged and how happy. And you think, there's other kids at my school that don't have that. And for me, I mean, I donated as a parent, and I encourage all of my parents' friends. I have no shame in saying, if you're able to make a donation, $25 literally will fund one child, one household for a month of connectivity. If you can even do that, it makes a difference. $500 a whole classroom. The total need, which we're trying to raise for, is for 12 months of connectivity to meet the whole need, which is $1 million, which sounds crazy, but we're already a third of the way there. But we need to keep up the momentum. We do, because it's not, what good is it to say, okay, we've got a month covered, and then you're back where you started. So if we're thinking 12 months long term, then on the other end, I think we need to work together to push city council, to push our city to say, how do we make this free Wi-Fi or fun Wi-Fi for all of our students permanently? Because what happens when this subscription is over? It's taken away, and then, sorry, you're back where you were. So that's where we need to be thinking. We need to cover the need now, and then we need to think, what do we do after?
Right. Yeah, like some of my friends at the Bright Beam Network, they have a petition going on change.org, a petition to the FCC, like because this is something that, I mean, it's been a problem for a long time. I mean, like having broadband internet at home is like super important to me. And when it's been, I've had it for many years now because I'm fortunate, but it totally changes how you use the internet. It totally changes how you access information. And yes, people use it for a lot for entertainment, but as far as like how my kids are able to look stuff up online, if we so like as a family, we're reading a book together, and just reading a few pages a day, and like then talking about it together. And it's sort of it's sci-fi, but it makes a lot of references to kind of history or kind of recent current events, and I can just pull it up on my phone on Wikipedia and be like, yes, this is, the Three Gorges Dam in China. And they're like, oh, there you go. And like, I didn't have that as kids, like we would bust out the encyclopedia. But there's the scale of what's available online versus what's in an encyclopedia. Like,
you bring up a great point, because one of the things that came up in last night's board meeting was the concerns over, a lot of our families, they have grandparents or people that are not familiar with tech that may not be able to help. Now, in many cases, if the child has been enrolled in the school and is familiar with these tools, they can kind of lead that or help. But they have to be of a certain age, right? Like you can't expect a first grader to understand the Google and all. So there are, campuses are dealing with that by providing packets as needed. Like there are but it's been a real wake up call to realize that we need to make sure that we need to consider that, and that some families that have grandparents are not going to be able to help the kids. Some of the kids are really on their own. They're really on their own. And so we need to think about when kids do go back to school, how do we do the parent support training and make sure all the parents are tech savvy too, enough to be able to help their child connect, there's just so many there's so much that we're learning from this process that is just really blowing my mind. But one of the things the superintendent said specifically last night was, yes, the packets are there, but the content is so much richer online. Like that was my point, because the resources, also the ability to see and talk with their classmates. I mean, things really a packet cannot provide. So it is on us. It's on the district. It's on all of us as a community to say, how are we going to empower people that that have never had internet to learn? And it's going to be up to us, especially when we can meet in person, to support that. Again, that's my opinion. I'm just spouting opinions now, but it opens up a lot. It's fascinating. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think
how to help and donate to the SAISD Foundation campaign, and all of that money is going directly to fund hotspots. So if you go to SAISDfoundation.com/donate, you will see we have a thermometer that shows how far we are in the fundraising effort, and it also tells you what each dollar amount gives. So I encourage, even if you can't donate, to share. Because even if you can't donate, you'd be surprised. There was a donor from my child's school that, does not have wealth at all and gave a good amount, just because they believe in it so much. And those are the stories. And, I hear the stories of teachers being connected and students and how meaningful, especially the ones that are just now getting connected, and what a big impact that's having. So we have to keep telling that story. We have to keep this need and keep pushing and asking people to please be part of the solution and help us. I'm very passionate about it, as you can tell. And I know you.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, like even those of us who feel safe, right? I'm at home, I have enough food, I have good internet. But I worry about our world. I worry about like how are people being taken care of? What's the world going to be like as we come out of this? And I feel like I want to do something. And so like by having you on, this chat and sharing that link out there, it I feel like I'm doing something, and I want the SA Charter Moms community to feel like they can do something. Like for every right, if they donate $25, that's a family for a month where those students in that household can actually connect with their classmates and their teachers, and they can still be learning. And they'll, like you said, the superintendent said, they'll get a much richer experience being able to access the material online than just having a packet or feeling disconnected.
Yes, that's what it's about. And you're so right, Inga. You are helping. And the more, this is the most powerful thing. And it does resonate with other parents, especially when we see how fortunate our own kids are. And we know every child deserves it. It's heartbreaking for me to think that some had to wait 3 or 4 weeks. It's heartbreaking for me. I always think of the 2%. What about the 4% we weren't able to contact at all? But yet we have to do our due diligence and keep pushing. It's worth it. So yes, thank you for making this a topic. I know you're passionate about this, and I appreciate it. I know your Charter Moms group is extremely engaged, and they care too about empowering others. So
yeah, I'm looking at my cheat sheet to see about what our topic is for tomorrow. So we're gonna I'm just gonna tease like tomorrow's topic of the Charter Moms chat. So I don't have a guest tomorrow, but I'm gonna talk about what it's like to be doing school at home with siblings. So I'm gonna post in the group and kind of ask people's comments about that. But I know that it's my friends with onlys describe one experience, and then my friends who have, I have 2 kids. They work very differently from each other, and I think when there's your kids have different work habits, right?
Oh, for sure. I'm really getting to know it now. Trust me, I'm definitely getting to know. They also, it's actually quite interesting to see what motivates each one. But even in this, even they have access to everything. They're so connected. They miss their school. They're begging to go back to school. And I'm like, I'm gonna record you, because when we're back at school, say this, and I'm gonna be like, remember when you never went back after spring break? How much you missed school? And they do. So it does. So we have to focus on that connection, which does help. But it's hilarious. I never thought I'd hear Paloma say that as often as she does now.
Yeah, even for every kid, there's something that they miss about it, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, well, how about we close out with the call to action again? Give us the URL where people can go and donate to the Connect campaign.
Sure, it's SAISD Foundation.com. You can do /donate, or if you go to the homepage, there's a click to donate.
Yeah, it's right there. Yeah,
it's a very easy. So that would be we really appreciate, and even if you aren't in a position to donate, because everyone's being impacted by this, and some have lost jobs. I definitely know so many in my own family that have been really impacted. Just share. Maybe someone that in your connect, in your that's how we spread awareness and build awareness, and that's how we impact more students. So a share, a donation, talk about it, or feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about it endlessly and connect you to stories and resources, etc. And follow us on social media at SAISD Foundation, because we are sharing the hotspot stories, and those are very powerful.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for bringing all this data, about like how many students are contacted, and the scale of like how many devices have already been handed out. And I think it just shows how important it is that we get the hotspots out to more students. So
yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Inga. I appreciate it, and hope to see you in real life soon. But I'll keep tuning into your daily show. I love it.
Thank you. Okay, be safe. Take care. Bye, everybody.